Today, in honor of its 50th anniversary, we'll be discussing our favorite moments from Saturday Night Live, and we'll be discussing West Nile Virus. This is Doctor versus Comedian. I'm Dr. Asif Doja, and this is the Doctor of Laughs.
Not real Doctor.
Ali Hassan. Every episode I pick a topic for Ali from comedy and entertainment, and I question him about it. Then Ali picks a topic from medicine and health and grills me on that topic. Now, this is currently the 50th season of Saturday Night Live, so in honor of this, we'll be discussing our favorite SNL moments from the past half century. That's right, SNL is as old as me. Yikes.
Glee.
Then we'll be discussing West Nile Virus. So, Ali, what do these two topics have in common?
Everybody from the cast of SNL has dabbled in some West Nile virus?
Possibly, I don't know. It definitely occurs in New York State, as we'll talk about. It's a pretty minimal connection between these two things. But I did have a quiz for you. Two people have played Anthony Fauci on SNL. He has never appeared on the show, as far as I'm aware. So who are those two people? Do you know?
I don't actually know. I've seen it once, but I can't remember who played it.
I'll give you a hint. One is a cast member and one was a guest person. The guest person actually appeared during COVID. Do you remember a couple, for a little while, they were doing like little film shorts in people's houses and things like that? And he's a very famous actor. He's a very good-looking actor. You know, conventionally. I'm not trying to harass him.
Brad Pitt? George Clooney?
Brad Pitt.
Matthew McConaughey?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt played Fauci!
Yes, and...
I do remember that. I was about to tell you that I did not watch SNL during the beating heart of COVID because I was too sad and drinking with my wife and judging people from our front porch. But we did actually watch that. I did watch that.
Well, and then the other person, it was a regular cast member. Kate McKinnon was the other person.
Of course.
Yeah, so anyway, those were the two people. Okay, so, we have a jam-packed episode for you today. So we're going to get into our top SNL moments right now. So, Ali, we decided to do this in honor of the 50th anniversary. And so we have a bunch of lists. We're going to list our top, from various categories. We're going to do a top hosts, top monologues. That was Ali. He told me that like about half an hour ago.
Well, I think those are two different things. There's a great host that is in like 6 terrific sketches, and you remember some of the sketches and they stay with you to this day. And then there's just a monologue. You don't remember any sketch that they were in, but that monologue really was either, provocative or searing or memorable in some ways.
You're going to see there's a commonality with all my top monologuers, top weekend update anchors, top weekend update correspondents, so the people who kind of come in on the right or left, and then our top 5 SNL skits ever. So the other ones, we can pick 3 to 5. I wasn't too strict with Ali about the numbers, but the skits, we got to limit it at 5. There's too many. There's too many. So, Ali, why don't you just say your list of top hosts, then I'll say mine, and we'll just go back and forth like that. Sometimes we go back and forth, but I think because we have so many categories, we'll just do each of ours. So top hosts, Ali, you can give them to me, and you can either put them in order or not in order. See, I'm trying to be more relaxed about this as opposed to...
I don't even know who you are, buddy. I don't even know this guy, Mr. Johnny Flexible over here. Bring me back my friend. Well, I will say that I'll be surprised if we have an overlap here, but one of them, I won't say number 1, but I'll say number 1, but it doesn't mean he's first or fifth or whatever, but Drake, I found to be one of the best hosts the first time he was on. He was on twice. The first time he was on, he really exceeded all expectations, not just for me, but for many people, reminding us that he started in acting and his acting chops were fantastic. His comedy timing, his delivery, people wanted to hate so much. And honestly, they were struggling to do it. This is a time where Twitter still existed and people were on it and they were like trying, and it was really like grasping at straws because he really delivered. I thought he's one of the best hosts. So Drake's on there. Secondly, Adam Driver he proved himself, like the comedic medium was, not beyond him at all, even though he'd done so much serious stuff. I thought he's an oil baron in Career Day. I still think about that one. And I still think about Undercover Boss.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the best.
Kylo Ren. Yeah. That is, because we also as a family used to watch Undercover Boss. It was the most hilarious tribute to both Star Wars and Undercover Boss. And it showed that a guy who's a very serious actor does not take himself very seriously. It was just ridiculously funny. I love that sketch. Next is Justin Timberlake. Again, you want to hate, you can, but this man has hosted 5 times for a reason. He's won an Emmy twice for those hosting jobs. And of course, Ding Dong in a Box is not going anywhere. It will live in my mind. When Alzheimer's takes over and everything else is gone, old Dick in a Box is still going to be there. And so many other things he did. I think he's, we can say what we want about Justin Timberlake, but musically and comedically, and even as a serious actor, this guy is a multiple threat. And I say threat in the most positive way possible. And so I'll stand by that. Another 5-time host, Melissa McCarthy, also an Emmy winner. Oh, yeah. For her hosting. She's done a lot of great stuff, but the Sean Spicer.
Oh my gosh.
Like I hated Sean Spicer with
it is unbelievable how funny she is.
It's obscenely funny. It's really, really funny. And I liked Melissa McCarthy, and that took me into I love Melissa McCarthy. And I hated Sean Spicer, and she was able to bring some levity to one of the more despicable people. It's really so good. It's just so well done. And then finally, I'm going to say Bill Hader. A lot of guests come back, and it's great. It's a little underwhelming. It's not what you hoped it was. There's a couple of good sketches. Bill Hader, I'm talking specifically about 2018 because Barry was a hit. He proved himself as a fantastic serious actor, which I think we would have probably all known about. And he came back, and of course, still, that's his same old Bill, doesn't take himself seriously. Undercover Office Potty is hilarious. And they redid The Californians and Stefan, and it was still so great. And that's not a guarantee, but he did it. So I thought, and one honorable mention, Asif, because you love the honorable mentions, Betty White. I thought Betty White in 2010 won an Emmy for that as well, was fantastic. And I don't know, it's just, you see so much respect from the cast for this woman. She's such an OG, and she's that balancing her absolute sweetness and a little bit of vulgarity is beautiful comedy. I love that woman.
Okay, that's a good list. You'll see. I only had 3, but you know what? I'm going to add. I'm going to add a 4th. I'm going to, because it was hard, so I just tried to limit it. I'm going to add Melissa McCarthy because you just reminded me again that Sean Spicer. She was so good, and again, everybody on the show is funny, but when you have someone who's that funny and who elevates the material so much, that's what I like about everybody I picked as a host. They are really funny comics. And I mean, they're not necessarily stand-up comics, but just comedians. So my list, so I'm adding on Melissa McCarthy, but next is Adam Driver. So Adam Driver, I feel the exact same way because he's been in so much serious stuff. He's a serious actor. I know he's in Girls and Star Wars, but I just think he understands
Star Wars is serious.
Yeah, no, I mean those are pop.
I thought you were mentioning comedies. You said Girls and you said Star Wars.
No, I think just who's
going to tell us that Star Wars is
now
not
he's been in more dramatic things, but. I don't know, man. It's so funny when he's the science teacher. I think it was in his most recent hosting time. The science teacher getting angry at the kids for misunderstanding. Oh my God. His comic timing is so good. He is great. Then I also have
commitment to the bits too.
Then I have Justin Timberlake as well.
Come on, man.
Guys who are recurrent hosts and have recurrent skits that are just theirs that they bring back. We didn't mention Christopher Walken. He's another one who has recurrent characters that are just his. Nobody else can play them. And Justin Timberlake has several, right? He has the Bee Gees.
Yeah, the cast must love that, right? We don't even have to write it.
Bringing it down to Smoothieville or, these are just, I just love it so much. So he's so fun. He hasn't been on in a while, which is too bad. And then I have Steve Martin, probably the number one guest. It's almost like he is another cast member. And Carlin was like that too back in the day. But Steve Martin has been on so much, has co-hosted with a bunch of people as well, including Martin Short. But a lot of his characters, the King Tut, the Wild and Crazy Guys, these were originated on SNL. So I'm going to leave it at that for my top hosts, but that's my list. So Ollie, why don't we go to your top monologues, as you mentioned, different.
probably similar to yours, given that you said there's a commonality between all three. My commonality is they're all stand-up comedians. That might be yours as well.
We'll see if we have the
We don't
exact
talk
same...
about him much. Yeah, we don't talk about him much, but Louis C.K., as despicable as his behavior was, I just remember him from one time. It was a great set. Confused a lot of people because they were not used to seeing comedy given like that. And also a lot of people were introduced to Louis C.K. and I remember them thinking about does he write material or was that off the cuff? I'm like, exactly. That is the genius of Louis C.K.'s work, where you're like, this feels like thoughts he had an hour ago and noted them down, when in fact he'd probably been working on it for months. Aziz Ansari came on right before Trump was elected, had a very funny and poignant and important monologue, comparing it to Dave Chappelle, who was also on that time. And Dave Chappelle was like, Trump, we're going to give you a chance. We're going to give you a chance. You give us a chance. And I thought that was interesting. But Aziz Ansari, I thought, was the most real version of himself. And he was also funny. And more recently, Rami Youssef. Mm-hmm. And I think Rami Youssef given that platform to talk about Palestine and to take it. So both SNL get credit and Rami gets credit for that. But again, a guy who can be funny and also draw attention to some, insanely important matters. I give respect to that guy every day, all day.
Okay, that's a good list. Very similar overlap. So I have 5 people, but I'm kicking one of them off. So last time I added, I'm kicking off Louis C.K. because he's a creep. But he was already on your list. You already did the creepy thing by extension. But the bit was I was going to kick him off in place of somebody else. So he was on it, but that monologue was really funny. I mean, I know the one. I think it was the first time he hosted, as you said. That one was really good, and is one of the best sets of comedy that I've actually ever seen.
It's so funny that you've kicked him off your list, but you're still talking about him as though he's on your list.
I'm replacing him with Bob Newhart. And one of the reasons people might remember we did a Bob Newhart episode a few months ago after he passed away. And I included in a clip on that episode, which is him talking about King Kong on the building, right? A lot of people have heard this one, and this night watchman kind of seeing King Kong and making a phone call to his supervisor. That's from SNL. Yeah. That's an SNL. That's his monologue from SNL. So a lot of people don't know that. So I definitely included that. I also have Aziz Ansari. And I also have Dave Chappelle. He hosted after the last 2 presidential elections. He will not be hosting after this one. Of course, this episode is going to come out after the election, so we'll know who won. But we're recording it right before the election, so he's not hosting this one. But probably my favorite one, and there's a lot of recency bias, I think, for Ali and I, because, we're thinking about ones we've seen more recently, obviously. But it's Bill Burr. When Bill Burr was on a couple years ago.
Oh, I mean, what am I doing? What am I doing? How did I forget about this?
Good. I still remember and quote some of the statements he says, because Bill Burr must
add to my list.
Bill Burr's comedy is like funny, and then you also use it to make a point about society, right? That's his thing.
Yeah.
He was really good too. So again, we basically picked all stand-up comedians because, I mean, that's what they do. So yeah, that's my list. So next, Ali, we said we're going to do our top weekend update anchors. Okay, anchors.
Yeah. No recency bias here for me, buddy.
Oh.
No recency bias. My 3 are Norm Macdonald. This is in order. Kevin Nealon, Dennis Miller. Mm-hmm. Those are my 3 favorites. And I guess if there is a common theme, I like an update anchor that still plays a character. I didn't realize that about myself, but I guess I do. Because Colin Jost, Seth Meyers, you seem like you were getting the real version of who they are. You're getting them. But with these 3 guys, it was still a character. Kevin Nealon, I mean, I've only heard him laugh once, and it was in an interview where he was doing the most absurd thing with somebody, and it wasn't working. I can't remember. I think it was with Fly on the Wall with Dana Carvey. And that's the one time I've ever seen him really break and laugh. But otherwise, I mean, that guy is a robot. His commitment to the bits is insane. Norm Macdonald, after his death, much had been written about how incredible and brave and fearless he was as an anchor. That's why he's number 1. And I really like what Dennis Miller did too. I thought that was the best thing. That was the best role for that guy, given who he was and how smart he was.
So we have some overlap. I have a bit more recency bias. So I'm going to go with Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. A lot of combinations with Tina Fey. Did not like Jimmy Fallon. Seth Meyers was fine later on with Amy Poehler, but Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, that was a great combination. I love those two. I thought they were great. And I'll tell you, I did put Michael Che and Colin Jost on my list. They were not funny at the beginning. I couldn't stand them. I thought these guys
I completely agree. We've really watched that duo come together.
And now they just get it. And it's them playing off each other is the best part of it. I really, and I don't necessarily find them funny individually, but together they are great. So that's my number 2. And then my number 1 is Dennis Miller. That's when I was watching SNL the most. I thought he was just the funniest. He does this character because, of course, Dana Carvey went on, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 times, and played Dennis Miller and imitated Dennis Miller. It was great. So, yeah, I mean, Dennis Miller, I'm not a huge fan of his politics, etc. nowadays, but, I think he's the quintessential one. Norm Macdonald's an interesting one. I didn't have him on my list. He did such a unique thing when he was the host or the anchor for Weekend Update. It just, nobody else could do it. It wasn't what anybody else did before or after. So, you have to be into Norm Macdonald. And I think, sadly, with his passing, I think I've come to appreciate it more than I did before.
Unbelievable. All the time he spent in your native Ottawa.
Yeah, it's true.
And you still didn't
His brother's still here, I think.
Yeah, okay. So that's good.
So next Weekend Update correspondence.
Yeah. I think my top one is Adam Sandler. I know people were like, Opera Man is not funny. And I was like, it really isn't. And I still find it funny somehow. But he was also like Cajun Man, Sleepyhead, Iraqi Pete, all these weird characters. I don't know. It was, he was an insane. It's just the idea of like, where did this come from? You sat there and you came up with this Cajun character and every word ends in yawn. I don't know, man. He made me laugh quite a bit. I got to give it, like, this is what we're talking about at the end of the day, right? Who made you laugh a ton?
Who and what made you laugh the most? That's it.
Yeah. Then I would say Bowen Yang has really impressed me. I feel like Bowen Yang, because I don't want to be, look, man, this whole thing could have been like the 1970s, right? I could have just Steve Martin has in his best sketch is, cheeseburger, no, like it could have been all that, but I'm trying not to look like I'm 100 years old and I'm still connected to SNL. And in some ways I am, my son who's 13 has been watching, my daughters were watching SNL. My son, like, staying up on a Saturday night to watch this, he's like, basically holding his own eyeballs open to do it, but he'll do it. And it's like, I don't know, there's some joy I see in his enjoying it. But Bowen Yang, most recently, he did this iceberg who sank the Titanic. And he was talking about how he's worried it wouldn't work. And I thought it was such a great, I think sometimes when you hear somebody talk about the risk they took and how they were not sure about it, it makes it even better. And then people do like it. You're like, good for you. I thought the iceberg was great. Because I also like impressions like that. I've never enjoyed somebody go, here's Robert De Niro, right? I never like that. I always like, here's my impression of my mom, if she sees somebody who looks like Robert De Niro in the grocery store, right? So we don't know the person's mom. We don't even know if it's a good impression. That's part of the whole thing. So I always like stuff like that. And finally, I thought Fred Armisen and Kristen Wiig really, like, again, that was entertaining. They had this singing duo called Garth and Kat.
Oh, yeah.
Unprepared singing duo. God. They would improvise together. One would start and the other one would kind of like be like, I know what you're going to, and they would sing together even though it's 100% invented lyrics, and it would annoy Seth Meyers so much, and I really got a kick out of that. That is like great improv. These are like incredible improvisers, two of the best to ever do it, having fun together, and I always enjoy
They're not on my list, but now I got to go back and watch those.
On that note, dude, I'm not going to say I wasted time because I loved it, but holy crap, I thought I was going to have to go by memory, and that's not good. My memory is mush up top. But the other thing, I was like, I'm just going to have to read about them. I won't be able to watch them because it's always like, as a Canadian, you get a lot of this videos not available in your region type of thing. Not true. If you go to Esquire had a list of 50. So I think I watched 35 of them last night, this morning. I'm just all Saturday Night Lived up, and I've been laughing a lot this morning. I've been laughing a lot.
Absolutely. And YouTube has quite a bit too. They don't have skits that involve music, which is probably going to come up in our next section, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So I have 4 people on my list. I just listed their characters. So the first is, and they're a bit more recent. First is Drunk Uncle. So Bobby Moynihan's character of the Drunk Uncle. I mean, just really, really good stuff from him. I wasn't a huge fan of him overall in the show, but that was really, really good. And then there's Cecily Strong, the girl you wish you hadn't started a conversation with at a party. Just that being the name of the person. And then I remember the first time I saw it with Seth Meyers being the anchor and her coming on. I mean, really funny stuff. We'll watch that with our kids. My kids, like, sadly, sometimes they talk like her on purpose because that really is how people talk these days.
Yeah.
Totally fun stuff. And just such an innovative character. That's what I like about, like, as you said, how did you think of this? It is so good. And Drunk Uncle was the same. And my next one is also the same. And it's Opera Man. I watch Opera Man again and I laugh out loud all the time. I just think it's so, like, as you said, how did you think about this? What made you come up with this?
And I think also, like, his posture, how he's dressed, how he's taking himself so seriously. The whole package is fantastic.
It's great. And my number one, I almost forgot this. I couldn't believe it. So it's the Kristen Wiig, and it's her travel agent, Judy Grimes. She mainly appeared with Seth Meyers. And so basically she's so anxious and nervous. She keeps changing her story all the time about what's going on. I'm not going to imitate it because I won't do a good job, though. My wife does a great imitation of Judy Grimes. But listen, it is such a good character. And the fact that Kristen Wiig can think about this, and she's going at light speed, you know, switching from one track to another, and the fact that she can maintain the comedy and do this, she's a terrific actress. So those are going to be my top anchors on SNL.
Yeah.
Why don't we move on to our top 5 SNL skits ever? Are yours ranked in order, by the way, Ellie?
They're not.
No? Okay. So you don't want to go alternating between me and you? You do? You don't?
Whatever you want there, buddy. I think we alternate. It's the top 5. Come on.
Yeah. Okay, so this is it. This is our ultimate list. Okay, let's start at the bottom of the list, if you can possibly do that. If you can't, that's okay. My list is in reverse order. So why don't you start with your number 5, and then we'll go up to your favorite, if you can do that, my friend.
Okay. This is very difficult because I hadn't ranked them this way. I'm going to go with Close Encounter is the name of the sketch. It is Kate McKinnon at her absolute best. She is breaking Ryan Gosling so bad. It's really, really, it's 3 people who are abducted by aliens, and Kate McKinnon's experience is unlike the other 2. And
I know. I love it.
You got to see it. You got to see it. I just watched it this morning. It's so fresh. I don't want to ruin it. Please go watch this.
I love
Please
that
go watch
skit.
this.
It almost made my list.
It's obscene.
It's amazing. Oh, what a good one. And she's done that character a couple times. And I think they even did it when Gosling came back to host, and he also laughed again. I have a few honorable mentions. So one, because Halloween just passed.
Come on, cheater.
David S. Pumpkins, that's a great skit. I watched it again. And then there's an old skit with Michael J. Fox when he's in an elevator with Dana Carvey and Kevin Nealon, and they start singing like the theme songs to like Back to the Future. And
I don't remember.
Oh, that is a great one. Hard to find because of the songs that they sing in it. But okay, we'll go with my actual list. Number 5, Celebrity Jeopardy. I mean, you gotta love it. Will Ferrell, you got Sean Connery, you got Norm Macdonald often playing Burt Reynolds. This is great comedy. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, my number 4 is a cheat because it's all the Jeopardy. Every time they did Jeopardy, I was excited. There was Jeopardy, there was Celebrity Jeopardy, and there was Black Jeopardy. Yeah. Black Jeopardy is really that's good. Really good. Like Tom Hanks was this Trump supporter. And it was 2016. It was right before Trump was in. You know, Norm Macdonald, it was like he wouldn't play a lot of characters, but when he would, it was like he's like chewing gum as Burt Reynolds. He's just like exactly as cocky and arrogant as Burt Reynolds would be, and he's just nailing it. Turd Ferguson Yeah, thought it was funny.
Yeah,
Just put it there.
and then you just give so many characters, right? In the old Celebrity Jeopardy, it was Will Ferrell as Alex Trebek getting frustrated, and Daryl Hammond making fun of him because he's, of course, Sean Connery. Like,
yes,
so many good stuff. And then in the Black Jeopardy, you got Kenan Thompson as Steve Harvey
type of
amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Amazing stuff. Apparently, Oprah Winfrey even called Tom Hanks to tell him how much she loved his character Doug in Black Jeopardy. So yeah, my number 4 is all the Jeopardies.
Okay.
All of them, but especially Black Jeopardy and Celebrity Jeopardy.
My number 4, we've talked about this skit before on our Chris Farley episode. It's Matt Foley. And we're talking the original appearance of Matt Foley with David Spade and then Christina Applegate laughing on the couch. Like, I just remember the first time I saw that, I was watching it with my sister. We're like, what? This is ridiculous. It's so hilarious. And I know the characters come back a couple more times, but I'm going to pick Matt Foley, that first appearance.
Are you telling me that character has come back with somebody else playing Matt Foley?
I just mean, that's not the only time.
The first appearance. Okay. Thank God. Good
Van
Lord.
Down by the River, right?
Van Down by the River. So that's my number 3. Van Down by the River. Of course it is. Of course it is. It's insane. It's insane. It's the best. Again, I think that sketch, even though I had been watching comedy and SNL for a long time, I think that sketch, there was like an awakening in my mind about this idea of committing to a character. Because he also had David Spade and Christina Applegate just dying. They couldn't hold it in. And that was giving him more fuel to be even more seriously committed to his character. And I just had this weird thing happen in my mind where I was like, oh, this is what geniuses do. Mm-hmm. This is the work of a genius. I remember feeling something different about that sketch. Like it was really something special in the world of comedy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't disagree. We basically have them at the same level. And of course, these always move up and down in our mind. I artificially made Ali rank them just before we started this segment.
Exactly right.
So I think we're going to be different, maybe, for these. I don't know. Because we, again, started watching the show at the same time. So my next one is one that I don't know if a lot of people have seen. It's called Key Party. And it has Seth Meyers and Amy Poehler playing this couple who are like swingers. And they're having a key party where you like put your keys in a bowl and then you exchange them and whatever. And it's Colin Farrell is appearing there with Horatio Sands is playing his wife, so he's in drag, and there's all these couples and they all do something hilarious. There's like a hippie couple, there's like a super weird couple with the wife is played by Tina Fey. I laugh out loud every single time I see this. And if you guys haven't seen it, just look up Key Party SNL on YouTube, you'll find it. I just love that skit. It's one of the first ones I thought about when we said we were going to do this episode. I'm like,
no kidding.
Rewatch it.
I think I haven't seen it again since I would have watched it live in the moment. I'm going to rewatch that. I remember that sketch. When you said, I was like, I think I remember Key Party. And when you said Seth Meyers is the host of the party, I was like, yeah, of course I've seen it.
And just their small things, like one of the characters keeps mispronouncing his own name every time they're reintroducing themselves. Anyway, I won't spoil it for you, but please check that out if you're not aware of this skit, because it's one of my favorites. So one that made me realize that Tina Fey is more than just the anchor on Weekend Update. Like, she's much more than that. She can play characters.
Sure. My number 2 is Spartan Cheerleaders, which was Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry, Craig and Ariana. And I remember I would be slightly disappointed every time there wasn't a Spartan Cheerleaders sketch. That's how much it meant to me. It made the show a little less exciting. I was like, always like, if it's happening, I'm like, I don't care about anything else. This is a great episode. It was always so good. Again, commitment to the character and the bit. But the one where they perform at their high school's chess tournament, the place where cheerleaders would be least expected or appreciated, was really one of the best. And so that's why it's my number 2. I love it. That's available online to be seen. Please watch it.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. I mean, you have to like Will Ferrell. There are people who are like, if Will Ferrell's into it, I'm not. But yeah,
no, for sure. So yeah, it's a tough one. My favorite Will Ferrell character is actually when he does Harry Carey. That is so good.
It was so good because I didn't even know Harry Carey before. And how are you so funny with a tribute to a certain person that we don't even know, and then you know, and you're like, oh my God. So it's double layers of genius because it was
but it didn't make my list. I watched a couple of the Harry Careys because it's tough, but we should probably again, do a full Will Ferrell episode at some point in the future. Okay, so my last two are both two film skits that came out around the same time. We're talking the early 80s, and they are what made me love Saturday Night Live and realize that comedy could do something else than what I thought it could do.
Oh, I know what you're going to say, man. This is my honorable mention.
So one of them is synchronized swimming.
Yeah, so good. Martin
Short. I mean, I just couldn't believe what was going on. These two male synchronized swimmers. I've talked about it on the show before. Just amazing. And then I'll save my next one, which is the ultimate skit and my favorite SNL skit of all time, but I'll let you go first.
I'd be surprised if I don't know what that is, because I felt the same way. So my honorable mentions were those two because I wasn't going with pre-tapes.
Okay, yes.
I don't know why. I don't know. I made that rule on my own. Also, this should be a top 30 for God's sake. But anyway, we've talked about it on this episode. The Chippendale sketch with Patrick Swayze and Chris Farley was my number one. Since that time, people have talked about how that was fat shaming. And then people on the show are like, but Chris Farley wanted to do it and he loved it. So yes, people might have seen something in themselves who are like, they were like, I can't believe they did this. But if you are able to push that all to the side, because, you know, it's tough. Like, he wanted to do it and it was suggested, he wasn't forced or coerced in any way. Again, Patrick Swayze's commitment also, when they get off stage after doing the most hilarious thing, there's another level of hilarity where Patrick was like, man, I don't know if I'm going to get it. You were so good. No, man, you were so good. I mean, that sketch. And then again, Kevin Nealon as a judge. There's three judges. How they are not on the floor is another level of like, you're impressed. You're in awe. You learn that Chris Farley actually has like incredible dexterity and nimbleness, and the guy can move and he can dance. And it's, oh God, it's so many layers of amazing. And for that reason, it's my number one. Although, again, like you said, if you ask me next week, maybe I'll have another number one. This is a rotating.
So interesting. Yeah. So it's not on mine. And I think I'm a bit colored by exactly what you said. And you can check it out, our whole discussion on the old Chris Farley episode that's in our archives. But it's the idea that there was, especially towards the end of the sketch, some fat shaming, which probably could have been done in a less kind of mean way, probably. So my number one is a filmed one, and I think you know which one I'm going to talk about, Ali. And if you don't, then you're going to remember it in a second. And it is Eddie Murphy's skit.
Eddie Murphy, Mr. White Like Me.
Yeah, White Like, yeah, that's right. So where he plays this character, Mr. White, he gets dressed up as a white person, and then how everybody interacts differently. You know, when he's on a bus, and then the last black person gets off the bus, it's only white people, and how they act differently. It just, again, it blew my mind that this is what comedy could be. That you could make a comment about race relations in the U.S. and
keep in mind, this is 1984. Yeah. We haven't seen movies like White Chicks. You haven't seen anything where people are doing this kind of stuff. Maybe we've seen Tootsie, which was Dustin Hoffman playing a woman in a man's world, you know, but this was, you're absolutely right. You know, Dave Chappelle hadn't done anything, that black Ku Klux Klan member. I mean, this was truly, truly pioneering. And as you say, just powerful, incredible commentary wrapped in insanely good comedy.
Yep. What can I tell you? So that's it. Those are our lists. I'm sure we're going to get upset. I'm sure my friend Fauci, who like listens to all our episodes and gets so angry with me after my takes, but these are pretty good. I think there's not going to be a lot of disagreement with our ones.
Well, it is one of those things where somebody's going to go, why didn't you pick this? Yeah. Agreed. I'm already agreeing. But as far as why did you pick this, you're probably going to get some of that anyway with your weird choices. But I don't see anything too weird here. I don't see anything too weird. And you know what? If you go and watch some of the stuff that we've mentioned, it's, you know, these are 3 to 4 minute sketches. I don't think you're going to lose any time of your life. I've already got 4 things you've mentioned that I have to go watch right after this, including the Bill Burr monologue. I don't know if I'll be able to find that, but amazing.
Ali, I got a question for you before we start this section.
Oh, no.
Yeah. What is the deadliest animal on the planet?
I don't know what the metrics are
kills
for
the
that,
most
right?
people.
Like, the old kills the most people, huh? Is it a bat?
No.
Is it the rabies-related thing? Is that what you're asking?
It's an insect. It's the mosquito.
Deadliest, eh? I really should have guessed that, given that we're talking about West Nile virus. You know what? I'm still in. 15 different SNL sketches in my mind,
exactly.
and I have not made the transition into what we are now talking about, which is West Nile virus, which is a mosquito-borne virus. I'm an idiot. Of course it's the mosquito. But also, you didn't say insect, so all of a sudden I'm thinking bats. We did a recent episode about bats. I'm thinking wild dogs. You tricked me. You tricked me, you sneaky little bugger.
And of course, I guess I was pretty remiss at the beginning. I mentioned Anthony Fauci, but I didn't actually explain why I brought him up at the beginning of the show, right?
Yes, and the reason is because he himself contracted West Nile virus. So let's talk about what it is, how common it is, why Anthony Fauci would get it, how he would have gotten it, how do people get it, and other things similar. And, should we be concerned about it is the overarching thing here. What's the takeaway? What do we do? How do we do it?
These are all good
What did
questions.
Anthony Fauci not do?
Yeah, well, he did everything right. Well, we could talk about it. He has a very interesting editorial in the New York Times we'll talk about, which is his experience with the West Nile virus. And he didn't really know what was going on, just the doctors. And he's an infectious disease expert. And he just thought he had COVID. He thought, but all the tests were negative. And then some of the doctors who were treating him in New York City basically said we should test for West Nile. They were right because that's what he had. But we'll talk about what happened with him. And Ali, as we go through it, if you have questions regarding his case and his care, you can kind of pepper those in.
And I'll just set up something as people maybe are waiting. If you haven't read this article in the New York Times, you're not aware of this case, you're probably waiting to hear something about a certain country somewhere, sub-Saharan Africa. Did he go to South Asia? No, the article is actually entitled "A Mosquito in My Backyard Made Me the Sickest I've Ever Been." And Anthony Fauci's backyard is in New York.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
crazy.
It is West Nile virus is now the most common mosquito-borne disease in the United States. So yeah, let's talk a bit about it. And it definitely occurs in Canada too. Just, we always think about it. Usually we think about it here in Canada, at least in Ontario, in the end of the summer, August, September. That's when we think about it. Obviously, don't get so worried in the winter when there's not a lot of mosquitoes out. But for whatever reason, that's when we see it a bit more. Not even at the beginning of the summer. I know what you're thinking. Beginning of the summer is when we tend to get a bit more mosquitoes, but usually we think about towards the end of the summer, historically. So this is a zoonotic virus. We talked about zoonotic viruses when we talked about rabies. So it's harbored by these animals or birds in this case, and it's a flavivirus. The flavivirus category also contains Zika virus, dengue.
Yeah, that's flavi, by the way, not flabby. Asif is not body shaming.
Yeah, the virus, yes. And yellow fever. Flavi. These are all kind of flaviviruses. And it was originally identified in the West Nile section of Uganda, so not really around the Nile River, but the West Nile section of Uganda. And that was many years ago. And it was only since 1999 that we've seen it now more in the Western Hemisphere. And, initially when it came out, it was thought to mainly affect animals, lots of different kinds, birds especially, but also horses, which we'll talk about, sheep, reptiles, etc. But now, over the past few decades, we're seeing this increase in humans, and we're realizing now that it's becoming more and more common that it's actually not as benign as we thought it would be. Since 1999, there's been about, if you look at U.S. data, and Fauci talks about this, there's been about 60,000 cases reported. But as he points out in the editorial, because again, it's interesting, he's the infectious disease expert and such a scholar on the subject, that a lot of people have no symptoms, or it just is like a cold. You feel like you had the flu for a couple of days, you weren't really sure what was going on, and that's it. So it's probably underreported because we're not testing for West Nile in those patients.
That is not what he had, by the way, but I know we'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. But among these reported cases, 30,000 will have neurologic symptoms, and 23,000 will be hospitalized, and 3,000 people died from it since 1999. So it is a bit concerning for sure.
Okay, so how do you get it in the United States of America? It's as simple as a mosquito bite?
Yes, and it kind of spread. We're not really sure how it got here from Africa, but it certainly did.
I think it might have flown.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it could be in a plane, on a ship, or something like that,
yeah,
right?
Exactly,
like some kind of,
I don't think the one mosquito flew all the way over here, or these birds.
And boy, are my arms tired.
So birds are really key to West Nile virus because the mosquito species that infects us with West Nile virus feeds on birds. Okay, so what happens is...
Feeds on birds, meaning once a bird dies.
No. So what happens is, the reason why birds are unique is they get infected through a mosquito. So mosquitoes going around from bird to bird, feeding on them. And birds have the ability to get a high level of virus in their body and still be alive and not sick or anything, and pass it on for a bit before they kind of succumb to the virus. And so humans and horses and other mammals are what are called dead end hosts. So they don't develop high enough levels of the virus in their bloodstream that they can pass the virus on to other biting mosquitoes. You'll still get sick from it, but you won't have a high enough one that if another mosquito bites you and takes some of your blood, it could pass it on to another species. So only birds can really do that. And so the birds that get it, they usually die within 4 to 6 days. But again, they develop such high levels of the virus that they are able to continue to pass it on.
And how do birds pass it on from bird to bird?
They don't. They pass it on through mosquitoes biting them and then perhaps biting another bird. And so you'll see these symptoms quite quickly in birds, whereas it might be a bit longer in humans.
Okay, and tell me a little bit more about these symptoms.
Right. So 80% of people show no symptoms. And so basically it goes unreported. So we would just never know that those people had West Nile virus. So could you and
they
I
would never know?
Yeah, we could have had it. So they could have found that, through testing their blood for other things. Then 20% of people develop symptoms, and usually it's about 3 to 14 days after being bitten. So you're probably not going to even remember this mosquito bite. And of course, at the time, it's not like the mosquito bite is particularly severe or different than any other mosquito bite you've got. So about 3 to 14 days afterwards, you'll get some symptoms. Often they can be mild, so fatigue or weakness and fever and headache. But then in a subset of people, as we mentioned, you can get much more severe symptoms. So you can get fatigue, an alteration in your mental status, so being kind of out of it, decreased responsiveness, lethargy, and a change in personality. Some people also develop a rash all over their body. And you'll see in Anthony Fauci's article they talks about, he basically was not making sense. It seemed like he had some sort of dementia. He didn't, but...
Delirious and incoherent is how he described himself. He didn't remember much from 5 days in the hospital, he said. It's just a blur. Some
people can get vomiting, nausea, or just not eating. Some people can get their lymph nodes enlarged. But the forms are so we see it in neurology because you can develop what's called a meningoencephalitis, which is like a meningitis caused by a virus. So you can get a stiff neck, lights and sounds bother you, and then you can get weakness. Because one of the things that we think about is if you have weakness of your limbs and an alteration in your mental status, like Fauci did, then you think, okay, it could be West Nile. That's what we as neurologists think about. Because what happens is, we did an episode on polio a couple years ago, so you can go back to our archives and think about it. But polio attacks what are called the anterior horn cells in our spinal cord. So these are like the cell bodies of our neurons that control all of our muscles. So that's what polio does, but West Nile can do the same thing. So it can basically look like polio. And there's certain tests that we can do to see whether those particular cells are involved. But what it will result is in weakness, and we call that flaccid paralysis. And so you're basically just lying there like a rag doll or a limp noodle, as we say, and you can't move.
As we say, is that a medical term?
Well, when I deal with kids, right? And then they're just kind of lying there weak, but they're also confused and out of it, and maybe even comatose. So definitely serious, disease. Older people like Anthony Fauci, who I believe is in his 80s, right? Ollie, from the article, I think he is in
pretty fit though. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not, the weak and elderly, but...
And the elderly are 60 to 89 years of age or more likely to have this neuroinvasive disease and the more severe disease and to die.
Give us the bad news, Asif. What is the treatment?
Okay, so there is no known treatment for West Nile. There's no human vaccine. And the best way to avoid the risk is to just avoid mosquito bites. So doing whatever we can, whether it's sprays, covering up, getting rid of standing water, right, in your yard or at your cottage or things like that. So most we can do there. So the horses, interestingly, get a very severe disease that can die. And if a horse gets infected, 40% of horses that get infected die. And so there was a big push then to get a vaccine for this in horses. So there is a horse vaccine available in North America. And so I don't know anything about horses, right? So I don't know if all horses get it or if it's an option, but I mean, that's a huge
Sorry, horses,
right?
He's not your doctor.
That's right.
So there is no treatment. What happens with people who have it? Do you have to be hospitalized and monitored? I don't imagine you can go back home. If
yeah,
you
with the more severe forms, yes. With the neuroinvasive form, when you get the neurologic symptoms, which is what I would see, yes, you do have to be hospitalized. It can take a long time to recover. And again, Fauci goes into that in his article. It can take 60 to 90 days for people to recover from it. But again, some people can get lifelong physical problems afterwards. You can look like you have Parkinson's disease. You can get tremors. You can get polio-type symptoms. You can get mental problems afterwards, like cognitive problems, like you can't think properly. And that's been documented in about 1/3 of patients with a confirmed infection. So just keep in mind, that's not 1/3 of everybody who gets it, because a lot of us get it, we don't know. So confirmed infection usually means you went to the hospital for something and somebody happened to check it, right? So, but 1/3 of patients end up having neurologic problems afterwards, and hearing loss can also be seen. So it's definitely a concerning disease, and it's reassuring that Fauci, I think in his article, Ali said that he's pretty much recovered completely, except for maybe some fatigue.
That actually did catch my eye, because he said, now I can walk a few miles without fatigue, which is, probably most people at 83 years old are not walking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He is a fit guy. So anyway, yeah, it was a bit of a concerning situation. So like I said, everybody trying to avoid those mosquitoes.
I mean, that's all you can do, I guess. I would recommend, if you can read that New York Times article, do read it, and it'll keep you on your toes a little bit, just reading about what he went through. And not because it's him, but just what anybody at an older age might go through.
So that's our episode for today. Let us know what you guys thought about our SNL lists. I'm sure that there's a lot you agree with and a lot that you disagree with. And of course, there's probably going to be lots of people messaging us with things we missed, things we should have included. Let us know. Dr. V Comedian.
Bring the hate. Bring the hate on this one. We accept.
Dr. V Comedian, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We are everywhere. And of course, let us know what you thought about the West Nile virus. Like I said, sort of scary, but again, just raising more awareness to this is important, as Dr. Fauci did in his editorial. Ali, what do you got going on? We're talking November, December.
Yeah, I got a few, 2-3 things. You could check out the website, standupali.com. Stuff will be posted there. But one thing I'm very excited about is the moth storytelling series. I did this in Cincinnati. If you're a regular listener, you might have heard me talking about going to Cincinnati in the winter. And I'll be back there in mid-December in Chicago doing a storytelling series. If you live in Toronto, there is something at CBC, used to be called Sounds of the Season. It is now called Make the Season Kind for a variety of reasons that I don't think I need to get into. But yeah, that is on Friday, December 6th. And I think it's actually across Canada through CBC, all under the brand of Make the Season Kind. So any support that you can give, it's a food drive to help people in need throughout the holidays. Please do. At CBC Toronto, we'll be doing a half hour of Laugh Out Loud. We'll be doing a half hour of comedy, and I'll be on a variety of shows there. And yeah, I'm also, singing from Dickens' play. I'm doing a bunch of weird things. It'll be all on the website. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you're all wondering, is he reading or singing? I mean, I don't know, but you know what I do know? That although I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. Medical issues we talk about are for your interest and information only, and they're not medical advice. Please consult your medical professionals for actual medical advice. Oh my gosh, let's hope Ali is Ebenezer Scrooge. That'd be so good.
I have yet to find out.
Bah humbug.
Bah humbug. Bye humbug.